All right, well, if anybody's got any questions, be sure to ask. And if if there's something that you don't understand or something, be sure to ask. And if any of you have any clarification, maybe I don't have something right, be sure and say something. What is UL 325? UL standard for safety door, drapery, gate, louver, window operating systems. Who is UL? It's the Underwriters Laboratory. It was founded in 1894. Founded to establish, maintain, and operate laboratories that basically do testing of devices and systems and materials to determine their relationships to hazards, to life and property. To ascertain, define, publish the standards, classifications, specifications for materials, devices, products, equipment, constructions, methods, and systems affecting such hazards. Basically, it is a non-government. UL is not a government entity, but works closely with the Consumer Product Safety Council. There are no laws that mandate compliance with UL 325, although some states and local ordinances reference the standard and require compliance. One thing they did emphasize is that some states are beginning to require UL 325 compliance, and some states are starting to make it law. It's a system installer's responsibility to ensure that UL 325 label listed operator is provided and the entire installation is designed and installed in compliance. Codes referencing UL 325 and ASTM F2200, the IBC, the IFC, IRC, which those are both International Building Code, International Fire Code, International Residential Code. These codes supersede both written specification and contracts between seller and purchaser, so the enforcement of these codes has significant importance. And I think that's one thing as installers that we do need to pay attention to is that a lot of times you will see in a specification a gate, an operator, there may be some safety devices on it, but that's what's in the drawings. What used to be we bid generally what was in the drawings. But it is your responsibility to be compliant to the UL 325, and according to this, what they're telling us in the book, the UL 325 supersedes what is written in specifications. So definitely something we need to pay attention to. UL 325 was written in 1973. Major revision of UL 325 standard significantly affected gate operators was the 4th edition, dated May 26, 1995. The next big change happened in 2007, and I believe the major change in 2007 was the monitored safety devices. The 1995 edition, I think if I remember right, it just mandated that you had to have the safety devices. That's all it did. And it keeps changing every year. I think 2018 was it mandated that you had to have it in both directions, not just one direction. Manufacturer compliance with UL 325 standards. The manufacturer voluntarily agrees to submit products for UL 325 testing. UL is best known testing facility. There are other nationally recognized testing laboratories such as NRTLs, ETL, MetLab, CSA that perform product safety testing. Products must be labeled and listed. This gives them the right to mark the product and the specifications on their product packaging and literature. It's incorrect to state that the device is UL approved. The manufacturer is simply claiming to have a gate operator that's compliant with UL 325 is not the same as a gate operator being labeled and listed to UL 325. Look on the mark label of the product indicating listed to UL 325.
On that note too, I think it's important to bring up that a lot of your gate operators with the sales staff that we have here and stuff like that, I know my guys don't know a lot of this about that as well. Not every gate operator is UL approved, UL listed. Calvin's probably going to touch on this, but not every gate operator that you can say, I'm going to put in this operator, that's fine and good. I installed one down at the Corps of Engineers one just last year. I mean, the Corps of Engineer project, they spec this gate operator, and that gate operator was not UL listed, UL approved. So if they didn't care, that's what the operator didn't want. It wasn't up to UL 325. So not all gate operators have to adhere to UL 325.
Yeah, and that's to note that you can actually buy one. That there's nothing that says that somebody can sell you one.
Absolutely.
What's our company policy on that?
Great question. I mean, what do you do? It's your spec. They got the Corps of Engineers spec'ing this operator. I mean, this goes back a couple of years, so it's kind of right in that gray area there, as it's just changed in 2018, something like that. But yeah, what is our company policy on it? I mean, those are things that we could, I think our company policy is we have to put it up to those standards no matter what. But with that gate operator not being UL listed like that, it did not have to require the same standards. No safety photo eyes. It ran on a simple command.
UL 325 is a voluntary standard, yet it's what they use in court. It's a professional standard, and if somebody gets injured and we haven't met that standard, that's what they're going to use to bury us in court. So we do need to meet UL 325 standard.
In that situation, like I was saying about the Corps of Engineers, I mean, I'm not judge, jury, or executioner, but on the same note, if you built that spec out and said this is what the Corps of Engineers required, that's what we put in, we made them aware this was not UL listed, that's what they want. I mean, there's some certain situations, but they are out there. I'm just letting you know that.
Also depend on the class.
True.
Yeah, that's what
Situation.
I would say if it's class 4, it's class 4, where it's constant pressure to make it operate. That'd be the only reason I would ever see that we'd install one that's not UL 320.
And you'll run into that. You'll run into that often. You're going to have people tell you. You're going to have local homeowners tell you that they don't care. They want this, and it's how they want it to run. You guys are going to have to overcome that. With all the sales team here and everything that we have for the next couple of days here, that's important to know about UL 325. American Fence, we follow that. That's our policy. Okay. Not a law, not nothing. It's how American Fence does it. Okay. Because you're going to hear people try to talk you out of all the different safety devices all throughout this. We follow UL 325 standards.
Absolutely. Installers compliant with UL 325. Installer takes key responsibility in safeguarding the performance of the gate system. Adherent to UL 325 and following manufacturer's instructions. It's not uncommon for a customer to request certain traffic protection features be bypassed or declined. This is not an option, which it does talk about. If the customer does ask us to do that, we absolutely cannot do it. And the reason why, one thing they did make a big point to us is that if you have a waiver sign that says the customer agrees to unhook it, that doesn't do you any good. The reason why is because if somebody were to get hurt and you were end up in court with a lawsuit on it, they're going to claim that they didn't know they didn't know what could happen to them. They weren't informed of what could happen, so it basically falls back on us, and that's a big reason that, just like Matt said, we can't do it. Exclusion of vehicle detention systems detection in UL 325. UL 325 pertains only to people. It has absolutely nothing to vehicles. That's why going through these pages, you will not hear vehicles talked about. According to UL 325, they don't care if the gate hits a vehicle. That's not the objective. General and traffic protection provisions. Gate operators and barrier arms shall have a minimum of 2 independent and traffic protection means for each traffic zone. Operate only after installed and enabling the minimum number of acceptable and traffic protection means. Be supplied with instructions. One thing that they did bring up, and this is a good point we probably all need to pay more attention to, is making sure that we are reading the manuals before we put in a gate operator. It's a big thing, and I can't remember which one of the instructors told us, but he had a tech that would read the manual for every gate operator. I mean, he may have put in 50 of the same gate operator, but he would read the manual every time. And somebody asked him, you know, why are you doing this? He took a new guy with him that he was supposed to train, and this new guy said, God, you know, you've done this 100 times, why do you keep reading the manual? He said, because the manual could change. And I wouldn't know that unless I sat and read the manual. I think that's a big thing that we probably all need to pay attention to, is to read the manuals. The other thing that came up in our training with the instructors was how many times some of these people had worked in call centers, whether it was for LiftMaster or Lanier, high security. They worked in the call centers, and the calls coming in to technical support. If people would have read the manual, they could have answered their own questions. And I don't remember how many percentage Matt, but he said like 90% of it was just read the manuals. So it's a big thing. Find out something that you definitely didn't know. The good part about it is when you do a new installation and you need to get the customer familiar with using their operator, if you've read the manual and you can explain everything to them, you definitely have the advantage of a professional. The exception is emergency access controls. Emergency access controls can be put within 6 foot of the opening. There's really nothing as far as where you can put those. You can put them anywhere to let the emergency people in. Types of devices. A type A is an inherent traffic protection system, which is built into the operator, which can be, look at your chart, inherent is the type A sensor, which could be your RPM sensor, your voltage sensor. It is definitely a non-contact, and every operator has to have a type A. So when we talk about 2 types of sensors, every system has to have two types of sensors. Your A is already in the operator. And one thing that I did not know is that your audio, your beeper, that's actually not type A safety device. But you do need to leave them hooked up, because that does send the signal to beep if it's had a hard fault, hard stop. The audio is what tells you that, so you shouldn't unhook it. But I used to think it was always part of the safety. It's actually not. The type B1 is a non-contact sensor, which is a photo eye or equivalent. Type B2, contact sensor, which is an edge. Type C, which is inherent force limiting. And it used to be, this is something that I learned, is that the Type C has absolutely nothing to do with a slide gate, vertical pivot gate, or a vertical lift gate. The only thing that Type C actually has anything to do with is a arm or a swing gate. That's it. And it used to be, years ago, we were told to set the clutches in the slide gate to set them loose, so that actually would work as a safety device. So if it hit something, it would slip the clutch. That's not the case anymore. It's not a safety device. Even though it's in the operator, it's in the operator to protect the operator. It's definitely not in the operator to work as a safety device. That's the type C. Type D is actuating device requiring continuous pressure to maintain opening and closing position of the gate. They're going to talk a lot about type D in here. I think the only thing you really have to remember about type D is that it's constant pressure. You know, we don't see it a whole lot, but it definitely, that's the type D when we talk about type D. UL 325, entrapment definitions. Entrapment, the condition when an object is caught or held in a position that increases the risk of injury. Slide gate entrapment zone, swing gate entrapment zone, vertical pivot gate, and vertical lift gate. Just kind of remember pips, pinch, impale, pin, or sever. Look, there's a page 1.5 on your book which talks about the types of entrapment sensors, the type A, the type B1, B2, C, D1, which this is kind of a handy chart to have. Class usage, classes of usage. And I think this is something we need to pay attention to for a lot of different reasons, because when you go through these definitions, we probably install a lot more class 2s than we think we do. We would say we use a lot of class 3, which class 1 is residential only for 1 to 4 single family homes. So that'd be all your residentials. A class 2 is anything that has public access or serves the general public. That's a class 2. If we go to a class 3, this is an industrial application which does not serve the general public. Now, the one way you can tell between the two is a class 1 and 2 has a maximum travel of 1 foot per second. If we go to a class 3 or a class 4, we can have a variable speed and we can go faster than 1 foot per second. So, where we have to be very careful about that is if you're doing a class 2 installation that has the general public, like American Fence out here, if we had operators on these gates, since the wholesale customers come in to pick up their material, that's general public, we could not have a variable speed gate. We'd have to have 1 foot per second. So you get to situations where, let's just say you've got a plant or a business that serves the public, and they've got a 40-foot opening. They want 1 gate, but they want faster than 1 foot per second. That's the fastest operator that you can sell. What you can do is divide it into 2 gates to open faster, double the time, cut the time in half. So that's the difference between the class 2 and the class 3. And a lot of the operators, I know for sure at high security you can set the class. And let's see, Casey, can you set LiftMaster? You can set the class?
No.
No. It is what it is. Does anybody else know of anything that you can change the class?
LiftMaster doesn't have any variable speed.
No.
It's chain driven.
Always change it. So that is the usage 1 through 4. What happens when an entrapment device is activated? Type B1, which is non-contact, stop the reverse within a maximum of 2 seconds. Stop the gate, stop and initiate reversal of the gate upon sensing a second sequential obstruction, which that usually will give it a hard shutdown. When it gets the first senses the first entrapment, that's a soft shutdown. And when it senses it for longer than, after it senses the second, then it gets a hard shutdown. result of the gate remaining at rest. And each company, my understanding is each company can do it different as far as the shutdowns and what happens after, senses entrapment. On the first one, soft shutdown, hard shutdown. What happens when a entrapment device is activated? Type A, stop, initiate the gate, maximum 2 seconds. The gate shall reverse within 2 inches. Stop the gate upon reversing the second sequential instruction. Types of shutdown, soft and a hard shutdown. If you get a hard shutdown, you need to reset the operator in order to get it to function again. And, what I've found, I guess, is that sometimes we get these hard shutdowns, and the one thing they will tell you is when you keep getting entrapments and you keep getting shut down, is release the clutch, unhook the operator, whatever you have to do. See if the gate actually mechanically opens and closes the way it should. We have a gate down in Kansas City at a trucking company that it runs, I don't know how many times a day. I think it's probably running, 250 times a day, Keith? Something like that.
Probably at least.
And we kept getting calls that, the gate won't open, the gate won't close, the gate's hanging open. So we'd go down there, we'd find something small that was wrong with it, we'd fix it. The gate would run for a while, then something else would happen. So we actually changed out, we had an HSLG in it that we put on in 2015, I believe. And it ran a long time, it was very dependable, but eventually we pretty much wore out the operator. And it had an aluminum gate on it, about a 16-foot gate. And so we put in a new HD25 high security. Gate operator ran great. We went for like 2 months, we never heard from him. And thought, gosh, it's going great. All of a sudden, we started getting telephone calls. There's something wrong with the gate won't shut. So Keith and I went and looked at it several times. Finally, what we did is unhooked the chain, unhooked everything, started opening and closing it by hand, and determined that the gate was bent, which we knew the gate had been bent. And I guess to back up the story a little bit is, after we put these gates in, they'd gotten hit a few times. So we had fixed them. And I told the customer, I said, we're gonna fix these gates as long as we can fix them so that you don't have to buy another gate. And it had worn out the track, and it had worn out the gate enough that it was just hanging up. What was it, Keith? Where did it hang up, do you remember?
I used about halfway closed up on the track. It was just you could definitely see a kink in the track. And
so what we did is we had Omaha make us a new gate. Went, picked it up, put it in. We put it in what, November?
yeah, weekend before deer season.
Yeah, we put it in November, and we have not been up there since. But had we not unhooked the gate and tried to figure out exactly what was wrong with it, we kept thinking it was the operator.
Well, we had already replaced the motor on the operator too. That gate was so stiff it wore out a motor in 2 months.
So I mean, I guess the lesson learned there was, we often think it's the operator. There's something wrong with the operator. The motor's bad in the operator, the photo eyes are bad, the loop's bad. Something else is wrong with it that's making it so that it's not functioning. At times it could just be the gate. And I guess one thing that I've learned over the years is And it used to be, first gates we put in Grand Island, Shad can tell you, we had one at Hastings Utilities that was 45 foot long and it had an HSLG on it. And it ran all day long, and I had the clutch tightened as tight as I can get it. And that old operator would just keep moving that gate back and forth and back and forth. Well, it lasted a long time, but today, if we were to put that, one of these new operators on it, I probably would not be able to get it to function the way that I made that gate function because of the inherent sensing and the safety devices. That operator is much more finicky than the old ones used to be. So, you know, that's I guess where to start with, you know, what's wrong with the operator or the gate. First place to start. Installation of warning signs, placards. There is a diagram in your book on page where to put your signs. Put signs on the gates. Make sure that you can see the signs, whether you're on the inside or you're on the outside of the gate. We used to put them on the gates themselves, but it doesn't do you any good if the gate is open, if the sign's on the gate. You can't see it from the outside. I think that's in the next chapter. It talks about putting on the gate posts. Let's see, okay, photograph, minimum of 4 signs, placards shall be installed near of the gate. Each sign placard visible by the person located on either side of the gate. General recommendation, installers take a photograph. For the installation of the document, this is one. Place the photograph in a permanent job file. Mandatory installation instructions. Gate operator. The gate operator is appropriate for the construction, the gate type, and the class and usage of the gates. I guess we talked about that a little bit. The mandatory installation instructions.
That sign placement is actually a pretty critical part to our system here at American Festival too. I know Larry's good about going around and checking those, but as far as attachments, stuff like that too, guys, what's everybody used for attachment? I've seen anything from hog rings. They're halfway crooked on the gates and stuff like that. I use zip ties, weatherproof zip ties, or weathered zip ties I call them. A lot better. They're a little bit expensive, but what's everybody use as far as placing those signs?
Self-tapping screws.
How do you use a self-tapping screw? I'm going to a chain link fence.
Find a post, or if it's chain link, then we use zip ties. typically. I know this was presented in that class too, is to utilize the warning signs that come with the operator as well. The warning signs that are supplied with American Fence are not adequate for the UL 325. They're recommending to use the operator instructions, because on that instruction or on that warning, it also explains to make sure that there's a pedestrian gate. So this is a vehicular gate only, and pedestrians need to be using a different means of getting into the building. So
Yeah, put them both on. I mean, doesn't hurt.
yeah,
Doesn't hurt.
yeah, and take pictures.
Absolutely.
So we should get new signs then if it's on a old existing gate and nothing's on there?
Our signs, American Fence signs.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I've been putting on.
Didn't he just say though, that doesn't mean?
He's saying some, the manufacturer signs, some manufacturers send out signs, other ones don't.
Right.
Just a standard sign that just says, they're basically the same sign that we got, isn't it?
No, that they have a description of the warning and stuff on them.
There's no verbiage in our signs.
No, yeah, true, yeah, that's right. The verbiage piece of it, like on, yeah. Our signs on everything that we don't have is what I do.
The other thing we do is, you can tell you, we carry a bunch of signs with us. If anybody takes a sign off, make sure you put the sign back on the gate. Every time you leave, there's a sign on the gate. Big deal. Even if people are taking it in.
So are we gonna continue to put the signs on the gate, or are we gonna put them on the gate post? I don't think we got any clarification on that. What are we doing?
We really probably should be putting them on the gate posts on both sides.
Okay?
That's what we should be doing. Now.
Think about a swing gate, when it's open, you can't see the signs.
Correct.
Well, that's every gate. I mean, a slide
Yeah.
gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put them on the gate post, but Jonathan, I think we absolutely have to continue to put them on the gates when we make the gates.
Sure. But I think in addition to that, do we put them on the gate post or not?
We should be.
All right. Well, we just need to make a
Visual.
plan and go.
I think if
Visual.
we install them on the leading edge of the gate,
Yeah.
and it works great, if we see that it's obstructed, just pull it off, move it. We'd make it to where it is visible.
What the UL is trying to get at is just make sure it's visible
Yeah.
on both sides. So if you're not mounting it to the gate, it should be on a pillar or a post or on the fence itself, just so it's visible from both sides. And if the gate is closed, like you said, or the swing gate, it obviously should not be on the swing gate, it should be on a pillar or a post or the fence right next to the swing gate.
The other place that talks about signs in here too, if you're doing a class 4 installation, is that, and we'll find it here later in the book, but there's also a sign that needs to be put in that installation next to the switch, I believe, that says, you know, constant pressure, and make sure that on class 4, the sign states something to the fact that you need to make sure that the opening is clear before you open or close the gate. Any questions or anything? I'm trying to, I don't know, am I doing a good job or am I going too fast? I don't know.
No, you're doing fantastic.
If there's anything else,
Does that come with the emergency, with the push button on that class 4? Do we have the sign? Do we need to order a sign, or what do we need to do?
that's a good question. I don't know. I don't think I've never seen one. I've just read it in the book.
I agree, of all the gates I've installed too, I've never have had a class 4 watch it. I mean, on a situation like that, I don't have that sign, I've never seen that sign either, so.
We installed one last week, there was no sign that came with the operator.
Well, probably the reason why is because were you able to set it as a class 4?
Yeah, it came as class
It came, what was it?
4.
Time Metal Plus system for state pen.
Time out?
So should we have, if we print off our own little stickers that we put by the button or anything?
Well,
If they don't have anything?
It's in here. We'll have to find it.
Of course, and the button's up on the guard tower.
Yeah. So was that Time Metal gate, was that, who made the operator?
It's the Time Metal,
It had a,
has so it has its own set of relays.
Has the
So this
Apex
gate
board.
comes in, these locking pins come up,
Yes.
the Time Metal has its own set of relays. The other half is actually a linear board, Apex 2 board.
Is it a linear operator?
it's a modified version.
Modified version?
They have their board, but it's actual Time Metal enclosure and operator.
Yep.
That's what runs it. And I had to set it up for constant pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. What other challenges did you have?
I don't know. I mean, you set it up for class 4, they're up in the guard tower, it's to a push button. They hold the button until it's closed, they hold the button until it's open. That's it.
Did it have an indicator on it to say if the gate was open or closed?
Yeah, they got a light.
A light that came on and off?
Yep, that's how they know it's closed upstairs. So one of them, they were visual, because you have the guards down there that stand there and say, hey, unlock the gate. They're up there looking, they hold the button over, switch, and then
Is
they
it
close it.
vehicle or pedestrian?
Vehicle.
Vehicle. It's
They have
pedestrian.
pedestrian next to them.
Pedestrian. What was the pedestrian gate like? What did you have to do to it?
It is just a mag lock, basically. They
Mag lock?
tell them to unlock it, they hit a button up there, it unlocks, open it, and then close it.
Did you have any safety devices on the slide gate?
On the slide gate, no.
No.
No. It was class 4, I don't know. It
Didn't
was a
need
gray area, I didn't know if they needed it. None of them was
It's
all spec
not a
out.
class 4.
If an individual is controlling that gate at all times, you don't need the safety devices on it, because that gate doesn't move unless that person actually is physically pushing it. That's why it's in the class 4, and that's why it's pressurized.
Great.
And we set another setup where they're actually, these 2 are at the state prison, the other 2 is at a different prison. Same setup, same everything, but they're using a camera, and they're controlling it from the office, which is clear on the other side. So they have a visual with the camera, then actually run it through a computer program that locks it open. I mean, there's nothing I can do about that, right?
Well, the computer, they did bring that up in this class too, is, you know, when you're looking at it through the camera, whether or not it is, you can get by with it being a class 4, because it's not actually a clear line of sight.
That's right.
But there's always a live person there telling them to open the gate also.
So, sure.
But they're actually controlling it. The person controlling it can't see it.
So what do you do if you're in a situation like this? We have a National Guard base up in St. Joe. There's a entrance and an exit gate. It's about 50-foot opening, 2 big 25-foot gates. We got variable speed operators on them. The guard shack opens and closes the gates all the time, but they do not want to do a constant pressure, so that makes it a class 3. So it has to have photo eyes, and it has to have entrapment protection in both directions. So in that case, I had to have the photo eyes working, you know, at all times. You know, had the guard every time just pushed the button and held it, then I didn't have to do that. But the other problem you have too is you have to be very careful. It's always going to be a class 3. Let's just say they do use a constant pressure to open and close it, but they also want a card reader or something on it. But when it's closed, then it's a class 3. Then you got to have all the safety devices.
And if we don't set it up that way, and another company comes and integrates it, does that fall back on us? Because we didn't actually wire it in to do that. We just put in gate operator, got it open and closed, thought they were gonna use constant pressure, then they had an integration company come back in, wire it back to their computer to an open latch ring.
Well then, we probably should have photo eyes on it. It should be 325 when we leave.
As far as he was concerned, it was though, because it was
Yeah,
a
'cause it
class
wasn't
4
allowed.
operation.
I think that's why we're documenting and taking pictures. If we're taking pictures and we show pictures of the condition we left it in, if they make alterations, that's not gonna be on us.
They're absolutely not gonna let me put anything on it.
And we set it up as a class 4 with the intent of the constant pressures. They hooked it up to a Stanley touchscreen system, and their touchscreen was designed so they press the button, it opens, they press the button, it closes. They actually had to reprogram their whole system to actually hold down on the touchscreen for that constant pressure. But like you said, they're still using the cameras. Is that technically a line of sight gate or not?
That's up in the air. Cameras throw the wrench in it. That's one thing they were brought down there too.
And it's at a state prison, they're not gonna just let me do it.
You're gonna see situations like that, circumstances like that too. I hate to shrug my shoulder and say I can't answer that, but you're gonna see some things like that, especially when you're dealing with class 4 like that. Airports, what makes an airport? Is it, you know, is it a class 4? It's at an airport. Well, I've seen private airports, not all airports. I mean, public come through them, so I mean, you gotta be really careful. But like I said, some of this stuff, we're gonna try to stay as close to the books as we can, but I don't have an exact answer on that either.
You know, and that's right, Casey. I mean, we run into that a lot. Kansas City has been a lot of gate operators that we don't actually put in the controls. You know, I mean, we set it up. Keith puts in the loops. We put in photo eyes. You can walk up to the operator, open it up, push the open button, it opens. Push the close button, it closes. We set the timer, 20 seconds, whatever. It works. We drive away from it. We never see it again. Well, you know, technically what should happen is the operator should not function without the photo eyes and without the safety. So if anybody alters it, it shouldn't work. But like Matt said, they went in and changed the whole computer program so that it would provide they could give it a momentary command, but the computer gave it a constant pressure. There's not much we can do about it. I'm amazed the thing worked because the computer, to know when the thing is closed, hit the limit switches, I guess.
It holds it until, I know how it works, it holds it, it gives it like, they counted how long it took, like 45 seconds to open. So I set the latch timer for 50 seconds. So it's still going to stop when it hits its limit, and after 5 seconds, it shuts off.
You think they're gonna have problems with it, Casey?
If they try to open it and close it right away, so let's say they're bringing in a small car, they open it halfway, and then they try to close it, yeah, they'll have problems that way. It's gonna have to close open, or they're, unless they hit the stop and go back.
So what do you do in Lincoln, let's just say that you get that phone call that they're having problems with that gate? What are you gonna do? I mean, you're gonna go out and look at it, tell them, hey, it's your system?
Probably. But yeah, I mean, it's not how we designed it, put it in, whoever integrated it, it's on them. I mean, I can change it and make it work, but it's not gonna work how you want it. Or do we tell them we don't touch it until we take all this stuff off? Or add the stuff? I don't know how we play that one.
I don't know either.
It's also one of those gray areas you run into with all the access control pieces that we're doing nowadays, the card readers and things like that. I mean, the access control piece, I mean, we're at a point in time where you gotta say, I'm the gate operator person, you know, after the access control stuff guys inside, you don't wanna be involved in that picture. I've learned that probably the hard way. They want you inside running the whole system, calling you up, and I mean, no, I mean, it can be a mess. So I think my answer to that, what I do is, I stop here. After that's you guys, I have no idea. And it's on them, so.
All right, mandatory installation instructions. Gate operator is appropriate for the construction of the gate type, and usage class of the gate. All openings of the horizontal gate are guarded or screened from the bottom of the gate panel to the top of the gate, or a minimum height of 6 feet above grade, whichever is less, to prevent a 2 1/4 inch diameter spear from passing through the opening anywhere in the gate and at any portion of the adjacent fence that the gate covers in the open position. So that would be the tail, anything 2 1/4 inches on a slide gate. Screen the slide gate, screen the fence behind it. That's the 2 1/4 inches. There's certain, as we go through this today, there's certain measurements that they're going to talk about. 2 1/4 is one of them. All areas of the moving gate panel from the bottom of the gate to the top of the gate, minimum 70 feet. All areas of the moving gate panel from the bottom of the gate to the top of the gate, minimum 72 inches above grade, whichever is less. That pass by a fixed stationary object in the area of the adjacent fence covered during the travel of the gate. That guard is screened to prevent a 2 1/4 inch spear from passing through it. Mandatory installation instructions, note following AST and F2200. Establishment must also be addressed by the installer. All exposed all exposed pinch points are eliminated or guarded. Guarding is supplied for weight bearing exposed rollers over 8 foot. I guess that's something I didn't realize, is that once the gate gets taller than 8 foot, even if it's a slide gate, you don't have to have roller covers. The operator is intended to be installed only for gates for vehicles. Pedestrians must be supplied a separate access opening. The opening shall be designed to promote pedestrian usage. Locate the gate such that a person will not come in contact with the vehicle gate during the entire path of travel to the vehicle gate. The gate must be installed in a location that is enough clearance supplied between the gate, adjacent structures, opening and closing to reduce the risk of entrapment. And if you look at the, go to the page 1.14, that's a pretty good picture there. It describes where to put the signs on both sides of the gate. It's also got the roller covers on it. It's got the screening back behind the gate. On 114, talks about top of the gate 72 inches. It also talks about and shows the 2 1/4 inch spacing between the gate and the fence next to the gate. Look at 1.15. This is a big thing, is that 1.15, it talks about the bottom of the gate to 4 inches. Anything that is above 4 inches up to 16 inches, we need to have a photo eye or an edge to cover that area. 1.15 also talks about vertical pivot gate and the screening in the back of the vertical pivot.
Does AFS make that screen? Do you guys have to not make that screen? Do you guys have that screen on hand? Does anybody know?
The screening that's on the.
Yeah, this backside is black.
That's deer fence.
Right.
I try to keep a little bit on hand.
Right.
Obviously order more for the job than we need, but it'll come in, that particular I think was 6 foot tall, 330 feet of it.
Yes.
For 250 bucks.
Yeah.
280 or something like that. It's rated for like 600.
Do you use that, Dustin, that screening?
Yes.
What do you guys use in South Dakota, Matt?
Chain link, black chain link on the backside of it, but we get a lot of ornamental gates that I need that with it, and they don't come up, so sometimes I gotta use chain link or white mesh or something like that, yeah.
So on your ornamental gates, what do you do on ornamental gates?
Black chain link.
And you get away with that?
Yep,
We don't have any luck at all.
I believe it.
No one will take it.
I believe it.
They're like, I didn't pay for a chain link ornamental gate.
I know. That's the stuff, that zoom mesh would be great.
For
You want
sure.
something-
And they won't take that either. That looks way worse.
This does?
There's no way they would buy that.
Really?
No chance.
No.
We basically, actually had a funny incident going on right now with the city of Sioux Falls. They have a couple gates that still, going back 5, 6 years ago, that they don't have them on. And we've
Yeah.
told them, you have to, and they're the same
Sure.
thing. They're like, we don't, I mean, it's right down their sidewalk. I mean, you can see how you stick your hand, I mean, it's gonna happen. And we tell them, you have to. And they're the same thing. They're like, if you don't like it, but I don't know what to tell you. If you want something else,
Yeah,
we sure can, but you need to have it.
yeah. This is a constant battle.
It is constant battle, exactly.
We started moving to a double picket gate on everything.
For adjacent panels in the entire length of the gate, do a
Really?
double picket. It's a little cost
Easier?
prohibitive sometimes,
Sure.
but for people that are that adamant that they don't want the chain link, that's one of the options they have.
Yeah.
That's what we find ourselves having to do a lot, is just make sure we have 2-inch picket space on all the gates.
I see.
But that doesn't cover you on the fence. You know,
Right.
You don't have 2-inch picket space on your panels.
That's right, same
So
thing.
then you have the same problem where now you gotta figure that out.
I think that zoo mesh though, we did some squirrel monkey netting at the zoo that we've used on the backside of it. And that stuff it's made to see through, so you can see the monkeys, and that stuff works really well, but it's not cheap. That stuff's super expensive.
Right.
And, again, but it's really cool. If you look at the gate, you can't even tell. Ornamental, looks really nice, but it's not the cheapest stuff in the world. I think AFS, if you're gonna make the gate, should have some of that stuff. It'd be cool. Just my opinion, but have some of that stuff around.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there should be more options available to the end user, us,
Agreed?
you know, from the
Absolutely.
corporate,
Yeah, good point.
you know, ideas, things like that. I think, if you're making an ornamental gate, and you know it's gonna be operated, it should be mandatory that it has a 2-inch picket space. I don't think it should be an option. You know, I think it should be mandatory. The entire length of the gate. I don't know why it's still an option when you know it's gonna be operated. Like,
Right.
what are you doing?
Yeah, good point.
Why are we making gates like that when we know it absolutely doesn't follow code?
That's right. Well, you should install them, like you said, either way, even going back to the customer as well too. I'm sorry, if you don't like it, when I walk out of here, what you do with your gate's up to you, but I'm telling you before I leave here, that's gonna be on there. And I'm taking pictures of it, so.
What do you guys do in Des Moines on your ornamental gates? For the
We
space?
usually don't run into that problem that often, where we have to put that screening on the backside of that gate.
You make your pick, you got your gap close enough together, then is what you mean? Barry, like, yeah.
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 We've been on some of like a Luma Guard, for example, they don't come with pickets all the way down the tail of the gate, so.
You can order it.
You
fully
can.
ticketed with a 2-inch
But
space.
who does? We'll just go that route. I'm not
Sure.
downing anybody in here by any means, but I'm just saying that gets overlooked so many times. And then maybe even 6 months down the road, hey, I want this gate operated, well, you still have to cover that somehow. So the first initial part of it might not have been operated while people are getting tired of getting out of their vehicles. So this is just an alternative, a fairly inexpensive alternative to do. For instance, we had a job here in Omaha that was anti-climb. It did not go all the way to the tail of the gate, so we thought about cutting panels for the anti-climb and bolting those on. And I said, you know, for time-wise, why don't we add this screening on? And the looks of it in that particular area looks fairly decent, in my opinion. So that could be zip tied on. This is probably about the easiest way, and it can be tightened down and stretched. So.
Is that black? I can't tell from here if it's black.
It's black.
I can order that in black.
Yeah, and if anybody wants a sample of it, just to take back, and that way they have it, I do have some small scraps up there that we can cut one out of, so.
Yeah, I wish we could get away with that, because it'd be so easy.
There's no way.
Right.
No, I
But
totally agree.
everyone's so freaking picky, you
Yeah.
know, the looks and.
And it does,
sucks.
it does, and I've had some customers where I put it on there, and they said, I absolutely don't like that, and I said, I'm taking pictures of it, when I leave, you can do what you want, and it's still on there, because they said eventually their eyes just don't see it.
Right.
You know, it's like putting up a fence and somebody actually pointing out, hey, that bolt's not there, but if you don't look at it that close, you'll never notice it. But yeah, no, like, some customers do get a little bit picky, but.
Yeah.
But for the sales staff though, definitely, if you know a gate's gonna have an operator on it, you know, the best thing to do is when you're doing the job, make sure that you've got it covered somehow. You know, whether you requested the spacing to be 2 inches and it covers the whole entire gate and the tail, and you put something in the bid at least to cover the fence somehow. You know, that we can do something with it.
And remember those numbers as well too, that 2 1/4, that's critical. That's the
Numbers are a big deal.
2 1/4, anything over 2 1/4, yeah, it has to be covered. Okay?
And that's why we're having this class. is
Exactly.
The lack of knowledge that out there, and just some things that would be presented, but I do agree that should be mandatory, that if you buy a gate from AFS,
Yeah.
it should have.
At least more options, you know?
Yeah.
There's really nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what do you guys do for gap fillers between the gate and the, you know, the post itself?
So on these, it has those little angle iron gap fillers.
Mhm.
Sometimes we use 2-inch pipe,
Round pipe?
round pipe.
With a rail in, that's
With
your
the rail.
See, that's what we've been doing too. And then Todd sent an email out to Calvin and myself and the whole Kansas team, said absolutely do not do that anymore.
I know.
Said it looks like trash, you can't do that. But, I mean, I got the idea from everyone, like I thought that's what we were doing.
We got a couple minutes, right? We can talk about this for a second. I'm in. I'm on.
Absolutely.
Let's put this on. How many of these have you guys put on? You ever try to put these things on?
Yeah, those little,
How are we doing this? Real quick, how are we doing this? I'm an installer, I'm out in the field. Come on, Joe, these are easy to put on. Where's my superintendent? Joey, how many of these have we put on? Ever try this? The gate's on? Try putting this on. How are we getting that on? I got all my mesh on. Oh, I'm gonna throw it on before there. I'm gonna hell on them, take everything apart, put it back on. This is the stuff. I don't want to get sidetracked.
Absolutely. This
This
is
is,
the topic.
this is the stuff that, this is tough to put on. And when you tell the guys you have to put that on in the field, after that gate's up,
right, and you're fighting with the chain too?
yeah, you're fighting with the chain, you got, no. That's what a piece of pipe on it's something the guys work with all the time, a railing and a tension band or an end band,
Yep.
and a piece of pipe going down. I'm sorry, guys, if it looks whatever. This is, and actually, this has been pretty, we've tried flipping these around as well too, on both, tech screw into the thing, using end bands with them as well too. They've been super sharp as well too on the ends of these, so you gotta be careful.
Plus they're short, plus you're creating a sharp edge. If a hand does get in there, you're just creating a scissor pinching effect.
That's what I mean, yeah, you're.
You know, when you put your rail in there, it's got a nice smooth round edge, the chain, if it does rub, it passes by easily. Not to mention, you're not gonna cut your arm off.
Yeah, yeah. But
I think it's the better option.
because we got all this here too, and going back to even the class we took down south too, this is a big group. When you look at how many people we have in here, this is our group. I mean, this was like a big part of our room. And so to have the knowledge that we have here today, guys, nobody else is doing this. Nobody else is even putting a post in there. You ask, like, what's ever used? Why can't we find this stuff? Because you know why? Nobody's doing it.
Nobody does.
Nobody's doing this stuff like this. That's where American Defense, that's why we're taking these steps. We are designing this stuff. We're building it as we go. So I'm open to suggestions. I think you got some great ideas, Jonathan. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
JC, what do you do?
Same thing. I use pipe. Yep, I got rail ends and end bands, just pop down there, 2 minutes putting that stuff on, take me a half hour. Or I have to take the fence down, which is asinine. And especially in the existing gate or something that's already out there. My biggest thing is like, you use a double track gate, some of those gaps are 3 inches.
Yep.
I gotta get special welded pipe with end bands put on it to fill those gaps, and it looks terrible.
Yep.
I don't know what else to do there. I don't know if you guys can get on the M drive here at some point and maybe pull up a picture of something I put on there and show an example of it, but I think we should come up with something different, but I don't know what else to do.
Agreed.
What's your thoughts, Larry?
You see, like with the
I don't like the flat stock we use for sure. I think it just creates a bigger hazard than the pipe would definitely, at least the pipe is rounded. I would like a cosmetically more pleasing solution, but I can't tell you that I have it.
That was the idea of going with the flat, is that it's purely cosmetic, right?
And I think it was easiest, cheapest in,
It's not easiest.
well, from a fabrication perspective from AFS, I'm sure that's kind of what went into it.
Do anything for use pipe.
We have used the track from the high security slide drivers. We have some leftover that we cut off just recently, and it worked out really well. It's obviously way more expensive. Four pieces, we have some four pieces that were laying around.
How'd you attach it?
I drilled through it and then self-attached it into the post.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can
Everybody's
see
got
that the
ideas.
round pipe may not look great against a square post, but round against the round.
Looks uniform.
That's why I was going with that. I don't think it looks bad at all.
I mean,
No.
that's your best alternative.
Yep.
For what we have,
Chain.
right?
The name of the game is we have to close the gap. That's what we gotta do, is keep that gap closed. That 2 1/4 inch spacing, again, that's critical information that you can't, from a sales standpoint, a lot of guys that are here don't know that. Anything bigger than 2 1/4 we have to fill. I don't know what matters. I mean, fill the gap, period.
Absolutely. If anybody's got any better ideas, I mean, definitely, bring it up, and if there's something that we can make, or AFS can make, that, would solve that problem. I don't know, can we use plastic?
I don't think it says.
As long as it's filled.
Exactly,
It
filled.
can be Netting, solid, it just has to be filled.
5-inch pieces.
Okay. Well, we talked about a little bit, the gate properly installed must work freely in both directions prior to the installation of the gate operator. This is a big thing. Make sure that, your gate, once you put it in, it does work freely in both directions and it's level, it doesn't roll. One thing that I don't remember talking too much about it in the book, but we did talk about it at the class was, gravity. If the gate's not level and the chain comes off of the gate can roll and hit somebody. So that's the big thing about making them level, is that, for 2 purposes. Number one, the operator's gonna work better if the gate's level, and also if the chain were to become detached, it won't roll and hit the person. One of the most common serious hazards associated with the gate system is the practice of individual reaching through the gate to make use of a control device on the other side. To prevent this reach through hazard, no controls may be installed within 6 feet of the gate. December 9th, 2019, there was a story of the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth that it was just built in 2019. I think, in fact, they just finished it. and they had a concert, and the cleaning people were cleaning through the middle of the night, cleaning the hall, the whole area. Like 4:30 in the morning, one of the cleaning people went out to take the trash out. For some reason, he had to take it on the outside of the gate, slide gate, to dump it. He takes the trash out. For some reason, he didn't have his card, or whatever reason, the gate closed behind him, and he reached through the gate. The controls were on the inside of the gate on a post. He reached through the gate, pushed the control button to open the gate. The gate caught him. It continued to open. Nothing stopped the gate. He got caught in it, and 3 hours later, he was dead. And that story actually, by the next day, all the news stations, the media, everybody had gotten hold of it. The general contractor was already mentioned, the fence company was mentioned in the news story, the engineer for the project. In one day, everybody had already determined that, and that was on the news story, was that the gate didn't meet the ASTM F2200 or UL 325 code. And it could all been prevented, I mean, in one day. That's how common this stuff is. So, I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, they probably won't even go to court because they're just gonna have to settle it. I mean, there's no defending it. I mean,
That was a question that's gonna be on, going back to that, the access control, the controls being too close to the gate operator. That is the #1 cause of injury or death in regards to gate operator systems, is the control devices being too close to the gate, okay, the moving gate, any piece of it. That will be on the test, and that was on the test we took down there. That's one of the biggest things. The most common injury occurs to automatic gates in some manner associated with the control device being placed too close to the gate operator. And you guys need to remember that, so that's one of the biggest factors. So many times people reach through, so many times people have situations like that, can't happen.
So how are we overcoming that? I mean, I've seen a lot of gates where we're putting a fence right along a sidewalk. People are walking right next to it, and then you have landscaping on either side. And it's hard to accomplish that without putting it right on the fence post.
Been a while since we've moved them on down the sidewalk a long ways. I mean, we've done a lot of different things to get them away. But
We had a lift master training, the guy said it's actually not in the UL that it has to be 6 feet away, it just has to be covered that somebody can't reach through and touch it.
Right.
He said it doesn't have to be 6 feet away.
We've fought this before. I've been back, I've been down there, I've heard one guy say the same thing.
Getting back and forth, like, you have so many different manufacturers saying different stuff, like, what do you go with?
I go 6 feet away. I go from 6
I
feet away
would
from
too,
the
but
gate.
he says it's not actually stated in the UL.
I think I've remember that saying too.
Well, that's something our company needs to
do.
decide, and this is what we're doing.
I say
We don't
so.
care.
That's right.
Actually, I think I looked that up. I think it is in the UL.
I should put it in,
6 feet.
and
Yes,
closed
on
box,
the-
that you have to open the box.
there's a
up.
drawing in the book.
Yeah.
On page 1-16, it shows the 6 foot on all 4 sides. On the back and the side.
I remember somebody at the class who brought up that same thing. They were arguing back and forth about it a little bit. It's not, some guy said it wasn't in there, and it is, so whatever. 6 feet. Do it.
One thing I did, Larry, downtown, I put a long distance reader. We had a slide gate that was right next to the sidewalk. And there was a street about a foot and a sidewalk about 6 inches, a fence, and our gate. I mean, it was like, so what I did is I put a long distance reader that looked to the opening side of the gate, and everybody had a sticker on their car. So when they drove up to it, it picked up the sticker off of the reader, and that's how it opened the gate. We had a free exit on the inside, but that was how they got in to the opening. It was the only thing we can do. We do run into this a lot in the city, trying to get it 6 feet away. Tom's got some apartments right now that the gates are right next to the street. It's going to be later here in the next chapter, but it talks about not opening a gate onto a public sidewalk or a public street. What do you do in that situation? you know, I see it with, we've had 3 or 4 of these projects that were residential apartments. And I think the people that, the engineers that draw this stuff, the architects for the residential, I don't think, they must not know any of this stuff, because they put gates right next to sidewalks, they put them right next to the street. You know, they don't tuck them back in up the driveway, move the gate so that it's, you know, up into the area. The one that Tom just did, downtown Kansas City, I went up there with the contractor 2 or 3 times to try to figure out where exactly we wanted to put these gates, because we were gonna have to open out to the sidewalk. We couldn't open in because it was up a hill. We couldn't move the gate into the parking area because we had 2 problems. If we moved it into the parking area, it went uphill so you could climb under the gate. And also, if we opened it in, we were gonna take parking spaces, and it was up an incline. So what we finally ended up doing is, we found the exact spot that the gate would open and not go over top of the sidewalk. And, I mean, Keith put that in. It just barely fits, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, but what are they doing for a reader on that, you know, or is that the exit?
Is that Quinlan Row?
Quinlan Road, is that an exit?
The exit is just a free exit.
It's just a free exit to get out. That's all it is on a swing gate. But it's tough, and
I can send pictures from every single branch, so I'm picking on everybody universally where we've been asked to do things that are contrary to code. And as a company, we need to make up our mind, A, we're not gonna do it, or B, let's be the professionals and say, let me give you an alternative. Because like you said, the engineers don't always know these codes, where I would much rather us give them a bid for something that is gonna be compliant and safe, and then come off as a professional and hope that they're gonna be willing to do the right thing with it.
where we struggle with it, Larry, is like on Tom's Quinlan Row, is that he bid it off the drawings, okay? Well, when we bid that job, we don't exactly know, we don't know what the slope is going up inside the parking lot. We don't know, there's just a lot of things we don't know when we
Well,
bid.
not only that, when you're, you know, when you're bidding it on bid day and you're competing with, you know, 8 other fence contractors and you're bidding at the 10 general contractors, it's pretty hard to cover all of that information and still be competitive, you know, because most of those guys on bid day, they look at the price. They're not looking at all my information saying, hey, I think you should do this, this, and this. But you have to attack it at some point later, you know. Otherwise, you know, with all the other things we have to put into, you know, an estimate worksheet, we get pretty high pretty quick, you know, especially where there's a lot of competition.
That's a great point. I mean, it's, the time to bring it up is not, maybe not the time to bid, but definitely before you install it, you know, like I said, being a professional, take it to the architect, take it to the owner or whatever. Hey, just bring it to your attention, here's an email.
Once you make them aware of
Exactly,
it,
aware.
once you make them aware of it, they're
Totally.
partially responsible for it.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
But yeah, the bid, I mean, like I said, everybody's bidding the same thing, they're gonna tell you that. Bid like it is, talk about it.
try to keep it down as low as you can until you can get to them.
You know, the one thing we do a lot of times too is we'll throw it back on the contractor, an RFI, throw it back on them and say, okay, what do you wanna do? You know, this won't work. And I don't know, Tom, how many weeks, we've spent months sometimes trying to get something like that resolved.
Well, it's not, it's pretty much every one of those apartment complexes. I mean, those architects don't, for the most part, they don't know what they're doing, you know, as far as the gate locations and, you know, fence locations. It's a constant deal. you know.
Are we recording that? Did you catch that?
No, he cut me off.
Gotcha.
What we do, you know, throw it back to the contractor and say, hey, you know, what do you wanna do with it? It's not, it's gonna be up to code, you know. And, you know, I guess the way I look at it too is, it depends on where we're putting it, you know, if we're putting a entrance gate into a plant that semi trucks are coming in and out of, you know what? I'll make it UL 325. Maybe to me it doesn't look like there's maybe something about it that's not quite perfect, but it's trucks coming in and out of it. That's one thing. We go to an apartment complex, it's a totally another it's a totally different ballgame. And, you know, does a person go to the point of even saying, you know, I absolutely will not put this gate in unless you redesign it, redraw it, you know, figure out a way to make it work so that it's compliant?
That's so tough to do as a sales position with all you salesmen here these next couple of days. That's tough to do. Nobody likes to do that. That's not how you guys make your livings. You know, you sell stuff. You want to be able to have the knowledge at your disposal to say, don't do it like this, do it like this. I don't want you to ever have to walk up to these guys and say, I'm not bidding your job. That sucks. That's not fun. You want to give them an option. We want to give you guys some knowledge. Do this, don't do that. And that's what we're here to help out with.
I know Corey's had a lot of those too, that, you know, we bid stuff the first time, and then we've rebid it, and how many times we've changed things, you know, just to make it so it is compliant.
Well, more and more, a lot of jobs in Kansas City are design builds, so they're just, you know, you're going off of 50% drawings and you're providing a price. And then as it works out and you provide information, like, hey, this won't work, we need to move the gate over here, this blah, blah, blah. They incorporate all that as the plans progress, but it stinks to do all that work and then lose the job.
Yeah, you get to the end, you don't even get to
When you get to 90%, yeah.
Oh yeah, I hear that all the time too. Mitch says that all the time, designing, and they don't use it or anything.
You are
So,
the
yeah,
designer.
Right, yeah, you help with all the design work and get it all right, and then
Let's
somebody
put it out
comes
for
in
bid.
and snags
Yeah.
it from you.
Definitely have.
Yeah. Which,
The exception is the emergency control device, your Knox box. That, there's not necessarily a specific code of where that has to go. But as we can see, going through these drawings, you know, it talks about the 2¼ inch gap, the 4-inch gap at the bottom, swing gates. Split setback. Just one thing we can go look at is page 1.9. These are pretty good little drawings that you can definitely use to look at. 1.9, the top page uses a non-contact sensor, which is a B1. As you can see in that drawing, there's a photo eye on the outside of the gate, on the gate post and on the receiver post. In that particular gate, they've also got a photo eye across the inside. They've got a photo eye across the tail. So in that situation, there's 3 photo eyes. You probably, I don't know how many people are actually putting 3 photo eyes on the gate. Does anybody actually do that? Dustin, do you ever put 3 on?
What was the question? Sorry.
Well, I was looking at page 1.9.
Okay.
You know, have you ever done a gate like that where you put 3?
Put 3 photo eyes on.
No.
No. What are most people doing? 2 photo eyes?
We typically do an edge on the tail, photo eye across the opening, and then you play the drawing zone.
1.9, the lower drawing, they're showing a B2, which is contact. They've got an edge on the leading edge of the gate. They've got an edge on the gate post. They've also got an edge next to the operator for the open direction. They've got an edge at the closed direction next to the operator. And they've got an edge on the back of the gate. And you can use a combination of any combination of those. And Dustin, do we have those drawings? We've been working on some drawings. Those.
He's not here.
So again, there's 200 more drawings that Adam has to put together, so it's going to take a little bit of time.
And Dustin, why don't you kind of tell us what we're planning to do with those?
Well, I know Mike has some of that information, but our intentions are to have a drawing of a one slide gate, double slide, or a double drive swing gate and a double drive swing gate.
Store on the left, store on the right. You know,
We're
basically,
gonna do that too.
yeah.
Okay.
But eventually
So
what
there's
we're,
more additions to that than I expected, but what those are intended for are similar to this of having an edge and eye. And it basically helps give you a drawing to say this is where we're going to put this edge, this is on the edges we need on this gate. For basically for a minimum. So now if there's a column or another fallover post that needs that edge on it, that's going to be additional stuff that can be drawn in for each estimator, whoever's doing the project. So our intent is to have all of this available for all the salespeople on the M drive, so you can print that off and give that to the customer, or cross off the things you don't want, and then make sure you have the correct stuff ordered. But that would be a minimum of stuff that you'd want on your gate. So whether you want a photo eye on the tail, the reason why I don't like a photo eye on the tail is because that's 90% of the calls. My gate won't open, now I can't get in. Well, they crossed over, so as long as you're protecting that with an edge, that gate would typically open unless you have a battery issue with your wireless stuff. But that's a lot easier to explain to the customer than why do my photo eyes keep freezing over, what can we do? There are some heated ones out there, but for LiftMaster, is the only ones that I'm aware of. So,
Are you charging for that, Dustin?
what's that?
Are you charging for that service call to go wipe the snow off the photo eyes?
90% of the time, no.
Really?
It depends on, so those customers are
Sure.
typically ones that we've just installed them within like the last 6 months to a year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but older ones, normally there's more stuff that you can, so when I get a service call for the gate won't open, typically, if they don't know that it's the photo eye, because they're a new customer, it has been explained to them, but it's new, it's the weather change, they don't understand, so for at least for the first time, I don't charge for that. But if an existing customer that, I shouldn't say existing, a gate that's been installed for quite some time, the customer typically wants you to look over the stuff anyway, just, hey, it's not opening, and I find out it's just a photo eye, we still do a little bit of diligence and look at everything else for them. And that's great.
one thing we did talk about in this class is these gate operators with UL 325, it goes off of the date that the gate operator was manufactured. So if it was manufactured in 2007, whatever the UL 325 in 2007 was, that's the standard that the gate operator should be set up to. Now, we've talked a lot about going back to old gate operators that's old, that don't have anything on them. Well, typically, what should happen is that operator should meet the standard of whenever the gate operator was built. So, you know, if it was a 95, you know, if it's got a photo eye on the open and the close.
95?
Or 2007.
Geez, 95, oh.
Well, that's the first year that's the first year that they put it in. But going back to the
That
date,
was old.
the date that it was manufactured, so you can bring it up to compliance.
Isn't that our company policy, Calvin, to bring it up to today's compliance?
Well, what the UL says is you have to bring it up to the date that the operator was manufactured.
Right.
So some of those older ones you can't, I mean, they're not monitored, so you can't.
It's not monitored, but you can still put it on.
However, yeah, we should
Yes.
still put that second.
That's right,
Yeah,
photo
and
line.
you can still put it on even though it's not monitored.
But UL says it has to be monitored.
Yes.
So
Well,
you're not bringing it up to, you know what I mean, you're not bringing it up to.
you're not bringing it up to today's standard.
That's right.
But you're bringing it up to at least when it was manufactured. Now, if you replace the gate operator, then you have to bring all of it up to compliance to
Right.
today's standards. But yes, you can, and I think that's one thing that, going back to all of our, Dustin's brought it up, I know in Grand Island, I'm sure they've run into it a lot of times, is they go back to our old stuff that's 15 years old, it may have a photo eye across the opening, but nothing across the tail. You know,
If you're lucky.
if you're lucky. But, you know, technically, we should bring them up to code at least at the time that the lead operator was manufactured. The problem you have with some of these customers is that they don't want to pay for it. And that's a really hard really hard to deal with. You know, I mean, what do you do with them, Dustin? You surely run into a lot of them that are not compliant, right? Here in Omaha.
So they give them bids for what it takes to bring it up to compliant. And I had this instance within the last couple of weeks. I just explained to them, I said, I cannot work on your gate unless this is, unless there's at least a photo eye on the front. It all goes to the compliance of it. So we gave him a bid. Basically, I went out there for a service call, but he had figured out that his roller was halfway down in the dirt and it was frozen and the gate wasn't moving. So I physically looked at the gate and said I could not do anything different with this until it would come up to compliance. So basically, you're just walking away from it.
That's really hard to do sometimes, but sometimes you have to do it.
Yeah.
I had thought we'd come to the agreement that if it was so old, it doesn't have an inherent sensor, that we weren't touching it. Like pre-2000. Because it doesn't have that built-in sensor.
I don't know.
I thought we talked about that, but I mean, one of our meetings we could.
We could have.
There's no way to bring it up to any code because it doesn't have that built in.
Yeah, that's why we, for the book, it states, that we, you know, to bring it up to what the year of manufacture is what we do, so.
But in that case, Casey, yeah, I mean, you could sell them a new operator. You know, the problem you run into a little bit, Casey, is this problem with any of them, is after we put the new operator on, then you're gonna have to make it compliant.
Sure.
And you're also gonna have to make the gate F2200 compliant.
Do you have a list of like, or can you put together a list of what years things were implemented so we can follow that? So we're not trying to guess and play? What happened?
Probably could.
Yeah, we probably could.
I mean, the two things they told us in the class was 1995 and 2007. And my understanding in 1995 would be the inherent sensors, the speed sensors and the limit sensors, that speed sensors that were required. I think in 95 as well, I think you had to have the ability to, the operator you had to be able to hook some type of a device in the open and the closed direction, you know, because it used to be, years ago, the only thing you could hook them to was either a reverse command or, well, you give them open, you give them a reverse, but the problem was that they were just momentary commands. So as soon as it cleared, it would function again, you know. I think that's the 95, the big 95 change. And I think the major change in 2007 was the monitored device. Those are the two major things that I know of, but I'm not an expert. I don't know.
In 2007, didn't they built, the manufacturers had to build it in there that you put the safety devices on there, or else it wouldn't function. In 95, that was not built into the operator.
Okay.
You still could be able to hook up your safety devices to that operator.
Yes.
Or it wasn't, you didn't have to put them on there, but it was built so you can put them on there.
Okay.
So in 2007, that's when UL 25 came out and said, no, the manufacturers, you have to put those safety devices in, so they had to build it into their motherboards to monitor that. That's the reason why they did that.
That was it monitored, Barry?
That was one way.
Huh?
One way. One monitored safety device, is that what it was? Because then it changed to two.
No,
correct?
they changed the whole thing, so you had to put 2 devices on that. And they made the manufacturers do it, that's why the operators won't work without your full eyes or your edges.
Yep.
And you have to have 2 of them on there.
That's what I thought 16 was both.
16 was It was.
16, 18?
16 was,
18.
there was wordage in there, some people took it as one way, that's why in 18 they came out with the new rule, had to be both.
Both ways.
So 16, 18,
Yeah,
2007.
so I got operators in 2014 that I don't have to have any safety devices on.
Yep.
It
Nothing.
requires one, but it's not monitored, so you can pull it off and it still works. It says that you need one, but it wasn't monitored.
Right, anybody else in this chapter on UL 325? Kind of went through it quickly, I think, but I would take, for those of you guys that are actually the techs, you know, keep a copy of this chapter, read through it. There's information in here that's valuable. Like Dustin said, we're working on these drawings. I guess one of my objectives was that we would provide some drawings for everybody of how you could set different setups, you know, a drawing of what you could use. And what I'd like to see us do, it'll probably never happen, but is if everybody was using the same type of setups, whether it be edges, photo eyes, so that it is somewhat universal. Because as Larry can tell you, everybody's got something different.
One thing about that, don't the operators have to be tested with those safety devices in order to be UL compliant?
Correct. You're exactly right, Casey. Some manufacturers, and that's the reason they didn't get into specific manufacturers, some manufacturers have only their devices that work on their operators, like LiftMaster. The only one that you can use is LiftMaster. But if you look in the manuals on each of these operators, it should tell you which devices have been tested. So, you know, when you buy a linear, it should give you a list of what's been tested with that operator to make it work. Whether it's normally open, normally closed, whether it's 10K, you know, how exactly it's set up. That's a good point, yes. And, you know, it would be nice in the future if we had ourselves set up to where we were inventorying enough product that we had, you know, certain lines that we could use, and you could get it from one place, so that it wouldn't be all compliant.
That's only for the first two. After that, so you have a semi drive-through, right? You have a photo eye down low on both sides.
Yep.
Your second one that you added, it doesn't have to be listed, correct, or monitored? It can be anything.
Because you're not utilizing that for people.
For pedestrians.